Back to this afternoon's program with an update on the U.S. military commitment to the Islamic terrorists in Syria.
Author and historian Gerald Horne believes Washington has learned nothing from its past mistakes.
The pressure has really been ratcheted up in Washington with regard to these rebels. The Israeli lobby in particular has been quite energetic and quite active with regard to lobbying for aid to the rebels, which is quite curious since if these rebels come to power, I dare say that Israel will have many sleepless nights. The implications are quite ominous. Obviously, the U.S. authorities have not learned the lessons of history. For example, we recall that in Afghanistan in the 1980s, the United States supported extremists, and then on September 11, 2001, those extremists and those allied with them attacked New York City and Washington. We recall that the U.S. authorities backed extremists in Libya, and then on September 11, 2012, those extremists killed the U.S. ambassador, Chris Stevens, in Benghazi, and it's plunged the Obama administration into a round of investigations. Sadly and tragically, it seems that they would like to see history repeat itself.
Yeah, what do you want, busted gun? I'd like to welcome Johnny Achi from the Arab Americans for Syria. Johnny, how are you doing?
Hello, Didan. Thank you for having me on the show again.
No. It's so important, man, because now we've seen them crossing the so-called line based upon this allegation. It has never been verified. In fact, it's been proven counter-truthful that the government has used sarin on the people of Syria. And as you well know, the United Nations inspector documented the fact that it wasn't the government of Syria. It was actually the rebels. So I guess my question to you and your observation is, where is this going?
Excellent question. Okay. First, I hope I don't get too emotional today. It is an important day. I'm getting a lot of calls from people in Syria, and they are listening to us today. I send them the web link, and a lot of people are listening. They are hearing the drums of war for the first time. Throughout this 2.5 years, a lot of people don't understand that 80-90% of the country is not even touched. So basically, a lot of people are living their normal life. Bordering cities, yes, economically people are struggling, but they're living their normal life, going to work, going to school, they're watching things on the news, they hear what's going on. They're hearing the drums of war for the first time today based on the U.S. Deciding to send more rebels and probably talking about a no-fly zones in the southern part of Syria. I just want to assure everyone in Syria to relax. The Syrian army is doing a tremendous job, and that's why everybody is now jumping up in the West. The mercenaries are being decimated as we speak today, and again, that's another reason why today it's very important for the United States to up the ante. The United States, in my opinion, is too weak morally to enter this war. Obviously not, we all know the U.S. war machine ability, but morally doesn't have the reason to say, I'm going to Syria, because the Syrian army, who is supported by the majority of the Syrian people, are winning the war on mercenaries, terrorists coming from outside. That doesn't make sense. This is the truth. That's exactly what is happening today. The Qusayr, we've talked about the Qusayr many times. I think it seems to be the Qusayr was proven to be more than the U.S. administration could accept. It is the town's strategic position. It stops the mercenaries from entering from the whole part of that Lebanon. So the whole western part of Syria right now is in the control of the government. The northern part of Syria, Turkey, is busy with its own problems, so you cannot do no-fly zones anymore, and the Syrian army is moving up in the northern Aleppo part. That's what's left right now is the southern part of Syria with its border with Jordan. That's what the U.S. army is right now. They're doing what they call military exercise, and they are talking about, leaving maybe some F-16 and some Patriot missiles there. Is there real war going on? It will not happen. It's too late to do anything because the Syrian army, again, is moving very strongly. But it's moral support to whatever left on the ground. The opposition, who is primarily being funded, is masterminded and armed and operated by U.S. NATO, are being decimated. The world has to accept this fact, and now we can go to real peace talks without any condition.
Let me ask you just a little bit off the topic, but is there a relationship between the government of Turkey, the present government, and its support of the rebels against their former ally, the Syrian government, and the uprising in Turkey?
Absolutely. Nobody wants to talk about this, but we know people in Syria realize that there's about maybe 20 million Turkish who live in the southern Turkey. That was part of Syria, by the way. The Hatay region was already all Syrians, and people live there in Syria. They have cousins in the Syrian coastal. 1936, after World War I, it was given to Turkey. These people have, Turkey has a composition similar to Syria's, and its ethnic background and religious sectarian. Erdogan, for 2.5 years, has been fueling the fight in Syria by sending terrorists, allowing thousands of mercenaries to enter Syria from the Turkish border. It has to come back and fight them in the behind. The Turkish government, I'm not saying that it doesn't have internal problems. Of course, the current regime in Turkey is Muslim Brotherhood regime. They might sound secular, they might look secular on the outside, but they are a Muslim Brotherhood. And slowly and surely, they have been doing a lot of changes here and there, prohibiting drinking, prohibiting nightclubs, and they have arrested hundreds of military generals in the past few months. So there is a lot of reason, but mainly it's because allowing the blood spilling on Syrian grounds, that a lot of people in Turkey feel Syrians are their brothers, and they do not want to allow the Turkish government to be responsible for more blood spilling. So they're paying the price. We wish them the best, but they've allowed that many thousands of jihadists. Those jihadists are in southern Turkey right now, and the arrest of 12 Nusra Front jihadists with 2 kilos of sarin gas that was in their position. That sarin gas, 2 kilos, like 4.5 pounds, is good to kill maybe 100,000 people. That same sarin gas that was used by the rebels to kill 24 people, Syrian soldiers and people, civilians, in March 19, and that's when the questions of chemical weapons first was brought up. So we come back to there is no inclusive evidence. Today, Putin said that he spoke with the U.S. administration about the concrete evidence that they have. Nothing changed. The U.S. says in the past 2.5 years, the Syrian government or Syrian army used sarin gas that has caused the death of about 100 militants. So in a war where you have about 80,000 victims, between about 40,000 of them from the Syrian army, if the Syrian army is going to use sarin gas to kill 100, it doesn't make any sense. It is a pretext, just like they did in Iraq. They're trying to do it in Syria. We hope that it will not, that the American citizens will rise up. We do not want any further war. Let the Syrians end the crisis. I'll tell you something, Dilan. Currently, the Syrian opposition do not want to go to peace talks. Why they don't want to go to peace talks? Because they have nothing to negotiate with. I mean, in war, the purpose of peace negotiation is to copy the situation on the battlefield and paste it to a treaty, right? Well, right now, the army is winning the war. An entering negotiation would mean nothing. But the war can end today if the U.S. administration can pressure the opposition to go to peace talks and sit down, and it can all be over very, very soon.
Yeah, John, it's interesting that even the New York Times, the LA Times, the bourgeois media is saying, where's the evidence that, in fact, the Syrian government used sarin? There is no evidence. They made this proclamation 2 days ago, I think it was, but have not provided no evidence. I know that there's one Syrian doctor by himself has been running around trying to be the expert, but no evidence, no facts have been provided. Yet the decision is made to provide the rebels with small arms, quote unquote. And we know with small arms comes U.S. military advisors who probably are already there, but now it's overt. And that gives a green light for NATO and for other European powers to directly intervene with whatever level to outdo the United States in terms of military involvement, as we saw in Libya with the French. So I guess my question is that clearly the issue of sarin is a false flag operation. There's no evidence of that from the Syrian government. This question of small arms and so forth, that's a nebulous term. What is a small arm compared to a nuclear weapon, whatever. So my question is that do you think there will be a peace talk coming, or is that, because the argument being put forth by the Democratic Party and Obama administration is that they're trying to strengthen the hands of the rebels so that when there is a peace talk, they can operate more from a position of power, as opposed to what you just talked about, the fact that the rebel forces have lost ground all over the place and really are in no position of power at all for negotiations.
Okay. That's a very good question. I know by names the Syrian American doctors who have been fueling this. I know them by name. They belong to a society here they've traveled to Turkey and they came back with the evidence, and they're trying to speak directly with the Obama administration about, there is sarin gas used, there's sarin gas used. We know it's a false. The Syrian government has been from day one warning from the use of sarin gas by the rebels. Okay, yet no country could permit terrorists and mercenaries to control the city. and to abandon responsibilities of its own citizens. The Syrian government carrying out this war to protect its citizens is not going to use chemical weapons against it when conventional weapons have been very effective. Okay, but we know what the mercenaries and the ideology of the terrorists, they just did 2 suicide bombings in Damascus, detonated themselves 2 people because they couldn't get in anymore with their cars, and they killed 14 civilians. So we know who has the Takfiri ideology, the Wahhabi, the Salafist ideology. It's not the ideology of the Syrian army. That's one. 2, go into peace treaty. Yes, if this happens, war is over. I say it again, war is over if we can have the Putin, I guess, with his meeting and then 2 weeks with Obama, can pressure him to go to that peace talk. But if the war ends tomorrow, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is going to stay in power. And for President Obama, that's very embarrassing for someone who's been saying Assad must go, Assad must go. Regardless right now that the new poll from NATO that they did in Syria, and they were done by independent relief organizations working in and around Syria, give NATO a report saying that 70% of the Syrian population are 100% behind Bashar al-Assad and 20% are neutral, meaning 90% are against the opposition. So if you really want to see where the country wants to go, they want to stay with Bashar al-Assad till at least 2014, when we'll have a new presidential election, and let the best man win, whoever their best man from the other side is going to be. But for most of Syrians today, they see safety with Bashar al-Assad. They don't trust the other side, which are a bunch of mercenaries who are coming to do Khalifa, Islamic laws and Sharia laws and kill and kidnap and behead and whatever. So it is an embarrassment for Obama, and Obama would be further humiliated by the Syrian policy, because let's don't forget that Syria has a resistance stand. It will not allow the U.S. and the Israeli imperialist, Zionist imperialism in the region. So keeping Assad in power is very embarrassing to the United States. Now, more importantly, if Assad stays in power, the U.S. foreign policy again would appear weak internationally, which is one more reason why the U.S. political establishment wants to go and an all-out regime change in Syria at any cost. So here's the decision. Will you want to destroy Syria in sake of getting that regime changed? And even though the replacements are nothing but terrorist organizations, there is no Democrat schools in that opposition anymore, because you vetoed out, the U.S. administration vetoed out all the real opposition. They want opposition that are expatriates, that are outside, that they live in. They have foreign agendas. They don't want Syrians to have Syrian agendas and present the opposition. So, in the next 2 weeks, a lot of things going to happen. We'll see where it's going to lead us. It's in the hands of the superpowers. I mean, this is the destiny of Syria today. The Syrian is winning on the ground. I'm assuring everyone that within a couple of months, it's going to be clear. A lot of these people are turning themselves in or dying in battle. Syria, for the first time, if I might say this, very important, Husayr, this city that the whole world is being crying about, Husayr, for the first time, Didan, in 15 months, finally, after being liberated 2 weeks ago, we're going to have a Christian mass for the first time in 15 months in the village, in Marias Church. I was on Marias' Facebook page. The Christian community is back in Al-Qusayr. They're cleaning up the place, they're cleaning up their church, gearing up for tomorrow's mass. Does that hurt or bother the U.S. administration that 12,000 Christians are back in Qusayr, which were displaced 15 months ago, and we made a plea to the world that they were given 24 hours to leave or die? They left with nothing, with their shirts on their back. Now they're back. Does that bother the U.S. administration? That doesn't show that these people have the right to come back and live in the society they were living in prior to this crisis?
Johnny, I mean, it's interesting because United States economy is starting to have a little bit of a rebound, primarily because that surplus capital, our tax dollars, and our labor is not being sent off to Iraq, Afghanistan, where trillions of dollars were sent for those wars. And as the so-called U.S. capitalist economy begin to have a little rebound, here we go again. Another war that's going to extract, our tax dollars is going to extract the surplus of our population to be used for destruction and rebuilding and military technology used to invade Syria. And of course, when you talk about Syria, at some point, you're also talking about the question of Lebanon, you're talking about the question of Iran. So I guess my question is this, and I remember Dr. Horn made mention of it in our little clip we played earlier, and I know Cynthia McKinney, a former member of Congress, talked about what they called Israeli firsters lobby in the U.S. Congress. Israeli firsters are people whose first priority is not the United States or the population of the United States, but in fact Israel's foreign policy, Israel's interests. And I guess it's an alliance between a Jewish Zionist, Christian Zionists, what we've talked about in this program, Islamic Zionists, that seems to have manipulated or pushed the Democratic Party, which has a tendency anyway to be Zionist, to cross the line and in fact send military weapons as well as military trainers into Syria on the side of the rebels. My question is this: what, from your position, I know you do a lot of interviews, you're one of the spokesperson for the Arab-American Syria, and the demographic, the polls have shown the majority of people in the United States don't want this war. What can be done?
The Obama administration must accept the loss. The U.S., NATO, Israel have lost the ground war. They just quit it. The al-Nusra front fighters, which constitute the foot soldiers for the Western military alliance, cannot under any circumstances be rebuilt, through whether renewed U.S. NATO military aid or no-fly zone. It's too risky. It's done. They are defeated. The Syrian army, knowing that they have the backup of the Syrian population, is moving for the first time. And we spoke about this, you and I, we talked about April 16, the amnesty that President Bashar gave them for 1 month before going on the offensive. For 2 years, we've been on a defensive, and these militants have been growing, and their crimes have just, from cutting heads to finally eating, hearts and whatever. These Syrian positions composed are not Syrians. We spoke about this. 95% are foreign mercenaries. Morally, you cannot go to sovereign nation and sovereign country and tell them, we want these jihadists. And I've read an international action report. An American organization talks about 82 citizenships have been killed in Syria. So we have mercenaries from 82 countries. It's the first time I read that number. So 82 countries have lost people. So all the jihadists of the world are pushed into Syria today. They are politically and ideologically, they represent the most backward and violent movement dominated by Takfiri, Wahhabi, Salafish, fundamentalist terrorists. So what I want to say is the struggle for freedom in Syria, does not exist. There's no revolution in Syria. It's a struggle for the destruction of Syria, led by the most obscure and reactionary forces that have allied themselves with reactionary Arab regimes like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and regional regimes like Turkey and Israel, and of course the Western U.S. imperialism, NATO, and France and Britain. There is no struggle for freedom in Syria because Syria was free. What is happening again today is not about defending the people's freedom or national goals. It's about destroying Syria, removing it from that resistance stance. Yes, the Syrian people have a defined understanding of their freedom and democracy. Yes, they aspire to improve on it, but they want to do it with their own internal national, social, and political force, not imposed on them through foreign aggression, and specifically not through jihadists who are coming from Azerbaijan, Dagestan, Afghanistan, who don't know a thing about Syria and the 8,000 years civilization of Syria, killing the Syrian minority, trying to impose Sharia law in a land that is not theirs, supported by the United States. It does not make any sense. Why would you want to turn a country that has democratic, at least we have a parliament from 1915. Show me any other of these countries. They even have a constitution, from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, to Bahrain, to all these countries that are calling a jihad war in Syria and for the sake of struggle for freedom. There is no such thing. It is a war to change regime, to take it into a different, to the Western camp. And I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, we're running out of time. But we thank you very much, Johnny Achi from Arab-American for Syria, and we give our support and love to the people of Syria who are listening.